I'm going to show a little video about RMarkdown because I think that RStudio explains it better than I could in this little 1-minute video. Because RMarkdown is like a really powerful tool for reproducible research and collaborative research, and I think it's really awesome. So let me just play this.
What is RMarkdown? An authoring framework for data science. You can use an RMarkdown file to connect to data and run code, as well as to generate reports of your work. An RMarkdown file is a simple plain text file with 3 types of content: code chunks to run, text to display, and metadata to guide the RMarkdown build process. Open an RMarkdown file in the RStudio IDE for a productive notebook interface. Write your code in R or use another language like Python or SQL. Call the render function to build a report from your file, or simply click the knit button in the RStudio IDE. RMarkdown exports your file into a familiar format, running your code and embedding the results in your finished document. You can customize how your code and text are displayed, or you can create parameters to pass to your code to use at render time. RMarkdown builds many familiar formats like HTML, PDF, and Word documents, slideshows, dashboards, HTML-based notebooks, books, websites, interactive apps, custom templates, and many more. In every case, your RMarkdown file remains as a reproducible record of your work, easy to track in a version control system like Git, and easy to deploy again in the future.
This book was created using RMarkdown, so I can show you all of the simple text files that go behind it, and then the photos or the little images are embedded and everything. Okay, so let's start one of these ourselves. So, like in the video, you can, to start a new RMarkdown file, there's a couple different ways to do it. You can go to File, New File, and then select RMarkdown. I also like to do, there's a little plus symbol here, which will give you the same options, plus, and then you can go to RMarkdown. So either way you do it, go ahead and create a new RMarkdown file. You'll get a default option to have an untitled file name by you that will turn into an HTML. I'm just going to go ahead and say OK with these defaults. And first off, you'll see that when we open a file, first of all, we have a 4th pane in our RStudio window. So the console has slid down here, and now we've got this 4th area to work with. So this space in the RStudio window is for editing text-based files. So this is going to be where we work in RMarkdown, or when we start to create our scripts. But it's also a place that you could look at a CSV file or write as though it was a text editor. You're going to be able to have multiple tabs and multiple files open here. So it's a way to organize text files within RStudio without having files all over the place. So what's nice about when you start a new RMarkdown file is that it's not blank. It actually has an example in here that will teach you something. So you can see that right here it says RMarkdown. This is an RMarkdown document. Markdown is a simple formatting syntax for authoring HTML, PDF, and Word documents. More details at rstudio.com. There's also there's some more information up there. There's also these gray areas that, like we saw from the video, this is a code chunk, it's called, and this is going to be using the R language by default. And this looks like a function with a variable called from it, like we were just doing before. So these white areas are kind of plain spoken text in English, and then these gray chunks are going to be R code. So just like he said in the video, let's press this knit button and see what happens. So when you press knit, it might ask you to save first. So we could save my RMarkdown is what I'll call it just for now. And you don't have to put a file extension on it, but the file extensions are .rmd. It will be added. And then once it's saved, you'll see a new window pop up that is your HTML rendering of this file. So let's take a minute and look at what you notice between the 2 files here, if you look at them side by side. So if we look at the text from the white chunks, you can see that like this all of the text that is written over here is also written here, but some of it is formatted. And Markdown has a handful of rules for formatting. So this RMarkdown text is large, and it was preceded by 2 hashtags here. This is actually something I think that's worth mentioning early, is that, so Markdown is a different language than R is. It's for text display. And so the hashtags in this language mean making text bigger, like a header, whereas in R, the hashtag meant a comment. So kind of immediately by learning these 2 things at the same time, you're seeing the same symbol used differently in different languages. And it will take a little bit of practicing, but you'll be able to get a hand on it pretty quickly. Okay, so you can see that, this text is bigger, and it had something to do with those hashes. You can see that this is actually a URL that we can click on and open. It will open up in my web browser. And the reason that that is able to be linked is because there's a little more formatting around that URL for it to actually be a link, for it to tell our student that it's a link. Knit is bolded, and so just looking at the patterns over here, you can see that if there's 2 asterisks on either side of a word, it will make the whole word bold. So we'll learn some more stuff about Markdown itself soon. This is really the power of RMarkdown, is that on the actual RMD file, it says summary cars, and that's it. But when we rendered the RMD file into HTML, it actually executed this function and reports the values. So another example of this is we can also embed plots. For example, here's a plot. And you can see over here, there was code, but this code has been executed and the plot is represented here. So what do you guys notice? What's the difference between the way this code is represented for the plot versus for the summary? This code, this plot pressure, is not written here, whereas this summary cars is written here. So do you guys see anything in this RMarkdown that could be the reason for that? Right. This is a parameter that says echo equals false was added to the code chunk to prevent printing the R code that generated the plot. So I don't know. So it's a pretty powerful way to create a document that describes your analyses, and generates figures and analytical output, but doesn't always show the code. So, I wish I'd written my whole PhD thesis in RMarkdown, because you can write text and describe a figure and be able to regenerate the figure right there in the document, instead of having to do it somewhere else, save it as a PNG, bring it into Word, and then if you figure out you need to update something, you're gonna have to go back somewhere else. Like this, it will let you run your code and write your reports in the same file. So it's pretty powerful for analyses, and we'll also see it's powerful for writing books and websites as well. In the help file, there's a bunch of cheat sheets available. And these things are super comprehensive, really well described visuals of what all these functions can do. So let's have a look at an RMarkdown cheat sheet. Let's look at the first one. If we click on it, it's going to take us online and download an RMarkdown cheat sheet. And let's just have a look at it. So this will help you remember or learn whatever you need to do. And you can see that there's a lot of things that you could, so those are called chunks. And you can see that there's options for within the chunks. So if you wanted to pass, we passed the echo parameter. So we said echo equals false, and you can see that the default is to true, but you can change all these things. So yeah, there's a lot more power that you can explore, and that we will explore as we go. But yeah, this is a great reference. One of the things that is great about Markdown in general is that it is able to borrow from other things too. So like LaTeX. So you can write LaTeX equations in these Markdown files. You can also write HTML into these Markdown files. So Markdown itself just does a few things simply, and then it's rendered to HTML. So anything that is already in that like HTML language or LaTeX to HTML you can use. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. If we're back in, just since we're talking about Markdown itself, there's a Markdown quick reference also in the help file. And what I think is really cool about this is, so it will pop up here in your help file, and this will show you what the rules are for Markdown. So we just talked about 2 asterisks making a word bold, like the word knit. There's also a way to make it italic by doing just 1 asterisk on either side, and you can play around with that. I'm going to give you guys a chance to play around with this stuff a little bit more, but what I want to show you just right now in the help file is that, so there's rules for emphasis, like italic and bold. There's headers of different hashtag lengths. There's ways to make lists with either numbered or unordered. There's ways to create line breaks, add links, add images, a few other things, but that's about it. There's ways to, here's your LaTeX equations question. This is the whole language, and actually the ones that I'm sort of going over quickly right now are ones that I don't use very often. Just within this little box right now are all of the rules for this language, but then you can draw from HTML and other things as well.